Hello and welcome back to the Macca's Talk Hockey podcast where me and my brother Charlie and our good friend Dan talk about English ice hockey, specifically the NIHL. And the first weekend of the season is finished. It has been played out. Not for the Bison, unfortunately, Dan. You had to come and
Tactical, mate.
watch
It's all
Swindon again.
tactical. Yeah, it's all tactical, mate.
But you start next week, which we'll go into in the second half of the episode. But unbelievable first weekend. A few little shocks in there as well, but a good first weekend for me and Charlie. Watching the Wildcats, which was nice. We did put a message out on our social media. We won't be as active with the podcast this season. I've just got a new full-time job. Charlie's just moved into his new house. But we will still do episodes. The social media might not be as active as I have done in previous seasons. But we will still continue to put the podcast on because I know there's a few hundred people who listen to them. But yeah, great first weekend. And there is a couple newsy bits. Literally just come out today. Jake Sylvester's going to miss a game. He's suspended, and it turns out to be the Swindon game, but it's because Sheffield have put a review in. And
Lava
after
loved the review. Flip,
yeah. Well, I don't know
that
who
man
it
is
is,
loving
whether
it.
it's Slava, the general manager, I don't really know.
I'm going to
But
give
either
credit to
way,
Slava.
that's 2 in 2 weeks, and they've both been accidental. But they still get a ban. He gets a one game. I've spoken to a couple people. They said that is very harsh. But yeah, I guess that's where it's going at the moment. We did speak about that on last episode about even if it's accidental, some things are just going to get given as bans, if injuries occur. And then the other bit of news, Telford Tigers, signing Brindley Caps, on a, I guess, two-way deal with Coventry, but I think he's going to ice majority with Telford. We'll get on to Telford very soon because they're the talk of the weekend. But for Brindley Cats personally, Charlie, that's a great move for him. I think if there was a team for me to pick for him to go to, I would have picked Telford. I really would have. I think he just suits that third line center role. I think is his, and he's got the opportunity to possibly go into top six. But to run that third line, I think what an opportunity.
Yeah, I think last year was just kind of I can imagine training in the Elite League full time helped him a lot, and I think that is important. And he was training with some top players, but this year I think he needs to be on the ice and playing. And Brindley Caps has always been a guy who's played top six hockey and scored lots of points, and he showed that in the National One, which was kind of his big breakout year. He's shown that for GB under 18s. And I think he's going to want to push for that in Telford. And I think the nice thing about Tom Watkins is he likes to spread the lines. He likes to play four line hockey if he has four lines, three line hockey if that's what he's got. And I wouldn't be surprised to see uh, Watkins splitting the talent across three lines potentially, because I know what type of coach he is, and I think Brindley Caps is it's going to take him a little bit of time to adapt again, but it didn't take him long against Leeds, the three-time champs. But I think it's a great move for him, and I think it's a brilliant move for Talford, which just I think solidifies the depth they have in that forward zone and really gives them that firepower across three lines. And yeah, it's a brilliant signing, and I hope he plays the full season in the national and really develops and grows with ice time.
Yeah, and then the odd game he might go and play with Cov if they need him. But I think Dan, obviously Louis Newell's back at D. I think it come at a great time for him to be signed to the Tigers, ready for that first game in Leeds because he slotted straight in, and Louis playing with his one of his best mates in Rhodes Mitchell King. So I think it's just all worked out in the end.
Yeah, some things are just meant to be, I guess. But it's once again they're sort of having struggles in D, which
Yeah.
hopefully they can sort that out early on instead of going through the season with the struggles at the back. But I mean, Louis Newell's been there for the season. He knows what he's doing. He's pretty much a D man now. So throw him back there, and he'll do a job, and he'll put in a shift for you. So yeah, it's lucky that they've got him there.
Right, let's get into the weekend then. And the first game happens to be Telford against Leeds in Leeds. Now, if there was a banker, no disrespect to Telford, you'd probably go Leeds at home, first game of the season. This was the one, Charlie, where we thought Leeds have got Telford at home. They'll go and beat Telford, and then they've got a really tough one in Peterborough. However, Telford, no, no, no. Seven different goal scorers, by the way. It was all the depth players, really. You've got James Smith, Joe Aston, Louis Newell, Tate Shudra, Brinley Caps got on the score sheet as well. And they beat the Leeds Knights 7-4 in Leeds after going down. I think three times they went behind and then they come back after they went 4-3 down to then just score three unanswered goals. And there were some highlight reel goals as well, starting with Louis Newell's. The little wraparound was the skating to be able to do that. And I really think it's because of the skating he does with the ball hockey. And that's helped him be able to do that, the skill he's got. And then Brinley Caps and Tate Shudras, Charlie, just undressing the defenseman and sneaking it in. And what a start for them.
Yeah, a big shock for Leeds, something they're not used to. And Telford, also, Telford fans will say this, not used to starting seasons very well. And flip me, they've done the opposite. They've beat probably two of the hardest games you can possibly play all year, really. And yeah, it's such a. I think it. I think that game set the tone for what this season's going to be about.
Yeah.
The league has four imports does take that step up, and it's ironic because the imports didn't
None of
really
them
do too
scored.
much on the score sheet, but they did show what they're
Yeah.
worth the next night. But it just shows what this league's about this year. That you can't be quiet in games, and in that game, Leeds were 4-3 up in the third period, and from a critical perspective, you have to close that out as a Leeds Knights team, and many Leeds Knights teams from the last 3 years would have closed that out. And so it's a big shock to the Knights fans, I'm sure, watching, and a big shock for Telford as well. Like you don't go to Leeds away thinking you're gonna get 2 points,
Yeah.
but it just for me it was like, all right, the National League is so back. Like we are back, and I'll say it as it is. I think this season's gonna be so iconic because I think there's so many more games like that to come of just upsets.
Yeah, especially in those away games, Dan. That is just a crazy, crazy result for Telford. Fair play, Telford, because they outshot Leeds in Leeds as well. Brad Day had a good game as well. And on a Leeds perspective, obviously we'll talk more about them in the game on Sunday as well. But do you think with all the new players coming in, there's a bit of trying to find the lines, who works well with who, a bit of a new defensive core, no McMullen. You obviously got Sam Cooper coming as well. So a bit of shuffling there and a few of the goals, I got to say, I think they were quite soft. And probably should have just cleared it. I don't know how to say it, but it's a tough start for Leeds, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, obviously, you interviewed Gospel, and he said that he likes to have that connection with his D. He likes
Yeah,
to have that sort of on the ice as well, have that communication. And maybe it could be Gospel still trying to get used to how his D plays. Obviously, the D are trying to get used to what they want from Gospel. Obviously, teams know what they're getting from Gospel, but having that actual connection on the ice is
yeah,
totally different. And I think just the players as well they brought in. Obviously, they brought in like a Balint Pakosdi. They've brought in obviously that import from that Latvian import forward. It's
yeah,
a different sort of style, and I think it's going to take a bit of time for those players to get used to either sort of going into the Leeds way of playing, or maybe Aldridge is going to try and change the style to fit sort of everyone. So I think for Leeds, it's going to be a bit of change. It's change that they've not really had the past few seasons. They've always sort of had the same sort of roster. You know what you're going to get from them, and they've just sort of improved in little areas. But I feel like this off season they've really made that big step in changing their team because they've had to. And
Which is natural for teams, by the way,
yeah,
after you win three league titles and
and
go on.
obviously the players that aren't going to be on the score sheet like loads of times. Obviously, I like Ethan Hahir and Dylan Hahir. They're big core pieces in that locker room. They've obviously moved
Matt
on, so
Haywood.
it's a lot of change, and I think give Leeds time because, like we've always said on this pod, you can never underestimate the Leeds Knights.
Yeah, I think you give them time, but you also don't want to fall too many points behind
Yeah, of
as
course.
well. And I think they're gonna have a hell of a response this weekend, where they should do. I'm sure Aldridge will be having some very big, tough training sessions this weekend.
best of
Anything
luck,
to add
Bristol.
before we move on, Charlie?
Best of luck, Pitbulls.
Oh, is that we'll get into that when we look at next week's fixtures. But the second game is the game we were at. The Swindon Wildcats versus the Solway Sharks. Not as many goals in this one. It was very much a defensive, I think, just tactical battle. Obviously, Solway coming up to Swindon had quite a depthy team actually on paper, and they had four lines rolling. Swindon obviously without Tomash and Aaron, so a potential little slip up. But defensively, we know what our D looks like on paper, and I've got to say, Charlie, with Rennie Mar back in goal, whether people think he should have had a longer ban, he was back in goal, and the defensive core really showed how strong it is this season.
Yeah, it was quite a boring game, to be
Yeah.
honest. But it's what Swindon want to do. You don't always want to win pretty, and I didn't feel uncomfortable at any times in that game. We got an early goal, I believe.
The 5-on-3, I will say, I was a little bit nervous with that one, but even then, we killed that really well.
Yeah, we had a big goal from Logan. That was his first goal in a Wildcat
Oh,
shirt, and you could tell that was like a big pressure off of his shoulders, and he had a really good game. And then the decor stepped up. Ryan Wiles continues to be the best D man in this league. I can't debate that one. Ben O'Connor was really good defensively. Didn't show as much offensively, but it was like we put on a show defensively, and Renimar stepped up. We had two breakaways, which many will forget about in that game, and it could have been a different ending to that game if they score one and it's 3-2 in a one-goal game. But I thought Solway played pretty well as well. Credit where credit's due. From what I was reading online, they haven't had like a consistent flow of training or any of that, and it's not the way you want to start the season. And it looks like their rinks getting delayed as well, like Bays and Stokes, because the Sheffield fixture had to be rescheduled. So yeah, it's not always easy for Solway, and I thought they put in a good performance. And yeah, it's a difficult one when you're playing Swindon at home first game of the year, but it was very professional by Swindon.
yeah, it's not one of those crazy starts to the season, Dan. I can imagine Aaron on the bench was saying, just keep it tight, shut it down. We know we've got the depth to shut it down. I thought our depth lines, the third and fourth line, were really good. Josh Shaw, Dylan Lipsey, and Luke Johnson were just wearing them out, weren't they? And Reed coming back into the lineup, I thought he was solid. And then with your new imports, you always want them to start comfortably. Logan van der Meraker and Tyler Watkins both getting on the score sheet. Obviously, it was a bit gutting we didn't get that shutout in the end. But yeah, it was a solid performance and one which, without Aaron and Tomash, you take a 3-1 win, don't you?
Yeah, I mean it's even more gutting because I actually predicted a shutout before the game,
Did, yeah.
and I was ready to
You
be
were 3 minutes
hold
away.
I was ready to be holding on to that one for the whole year. But yeah, no, I think when you're going against Solway, you know they're going to be defensively tight. You know they're going to start the game off obviously
With the two
defensively well
import D,
because they've
yeah.
they've got a two import D, they've got the Brit D of obviously Liam Stenton and Kel Beattie.
Beattie was
Um,
unbelievable, by the way.
yeah,
I thought he was so good.
the top four pair that they've got is unbelievable. Then they've obviously got the backing of Jordan Marr as well. But I think what you just have to do is you've just got to get that early goal, which Swindon did, and then sort of they took control after that. You had, like you were talking about with Lipsy and Shaw, they had that line of just really hard forecheck, and we said before the game that's exactly what they need to be doing this whole year. They need to be going in on the forecheck, going hard into the boards and just coming out with the puck. And I think they had a full shift of just keeping the puck in the corner or in the zone. And I think that's exactly what they need because what you had there is you had all of those obviously hard into the boards. All your top six guys were resting on the bench. And then you had that line change come in. And obviously it's fresher legs coming into a team that's just been hemmed in their zone for 2 minutes. So
Yeah.
you've obviously got that very good transition of line changes. And I think, like Charlie said, it was a very professional game from Swindon. It's they're not going to go for those pretty wins. They're not going to go for those pretty goals and highlight real goals. As long as they go in and just get the job done, and they're just going to carry on moving and rolling through the season. That's exactly what Swindon needs to do this year.
There's going to be games where we do get 7, maybe 8 goals, and it just all seems to click. But if you're solid defensively, you said, Dan, defense wins your league titles, wins you those cups, and it was a good first game. On to Milton Keynes, and again another solid game for them at home against the Pitbulls. Fair play to the Pitbulls. From what I got told from a couple Milton Keynes fans, they look like a much more solid team. They faced 48 shots. against MK, which is a big load, but they dealt with it well. But MK on the night, 5 power play goals, something they struggled with last season. 5 out of 7. Pitbull's taken a bit too many penalties, but when you're in that big rink, sometimes it's just hard not to take the penalties. And they got punished on the power play. Elliot Lewis before the weekend was my banker to get a goal against his former team in front of the MK crowd. He did score the third goal. Dom Gabay having a really good game at home, improving their power play as well, which I think was a big part of him signing for them. So yeah, just a solid home win, Charlie, for Milton Keynes. Same old kind of thing on their own rink.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to take out of that game for Bristol. I only realised till afterwards 5 power play goals. Like you said, it's not the best because you don't want to give away penalties, but they conceded 2 5-on-5 goals in
They were
MK.
within the first 10
Like
minutes.
that's not bad. 2 5-on-5 goals in MK is not bad, and they lost their 15-2 last year. Like and 48 shots is lower for them. So like it's a big improvement, and that showed when me and Dan watched them on Sunday, and they surprised me, and I think 7-2 is a good scoreline in MK for Bristol. And I know some people look at that and laugh, but they got 2 goals against them late on. They didn't give up. They played 60 minutes. They got the 2 goals late on. They caught them sleeping, and I think it was Headley who played. Headley don't like conceding in the last minute. We did it against him when we were 5-0 down and we scored one, and he was not happy. Um, and I think it's a big positive from an MK perspective. Their power play was their weakest thing last year, and it was their best thing on that game. That's a big improvement for MK, and I think one of the guys who has improved that dramatically is Dom Gabay. He's at Bees was always a power play guy, and I think he's gonna add that strength on their PP this year and make their PP much more threatening. I think it was like 22% last year. They'll
Yeah.
be much more looking at 28, 29, 30% this year. So yeah, positives for both teams, I think. I think it's a game where both teams come out pretty happy.
Yeah, and they chose to, because this is going to be a talking point throughout the whole season because they've got the 5 imports, but Jokinen was the one to be scratched this weekend. So Spadafore Forsberg, it just makes that defense a bit stronger at home. But it'd be interesting to see. We'll come on to Sunday in a minute whether that changes going into this weekend. But a comfortable home win for MK. And then the final game on the Saturday was that big one, Sheffield against Hull. Now, I think it will really kick off possibly back when they first play in Hull, but still, a lot on the line. And yeah, Bobby Chamberlain got a hat trick in the game, but was on the wrong side of a 5-3 defeat. The Steel Dogs getting the win on home ice. Nice to see the crowd really high as well. I think there was 1,000, just under 1,200, which is nice. Um, Liam Steele, Charlie, getting on the score sheet. I know you were raving about him before the season. He looks sharp. And then Dan, the one I want to talk about, Carl Watson. The one we were excited to see, wanted to see what he play like, but he comes in, gets 2 goals, and has fit straight in on that line with Gendunov. And who's the Finnish guy? Oscar, no, Larinma. So Gendunov, Larinma, and Watson, and it was Watson who got the 2 goals. So the depth for Sheffield showing at the moment. Dan, sorry.
Yeah, that's all good. Um, yeah, I think Watson obviously looking at his stats and his CV, he's coming in and he knows how to score points. I reckon he's a guy that if you put him on a line with players like Gendunov and that Finnish guy, I'm not going to do the name, but
Larinma.
Larin Ma. But if he's on that line, I think he's going to really complement them well, and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to play up to their level, and he's going to be a guy that you can sort of he's going to chip in on points. He's going to score goals, and I think that's a perfect guy to sort of pair an import with because not only are you going to still be able to get points from your import, but you're also going to be able to get the best out of obviously Carl Watson, who's a Brit, and you're going
Reminds
to
me a
get the
bit
best.
of when Bally played with Malas and now he kind of is that third guy on the line. He's going to chip in with a lot of points, goals around the net kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his CV, he definitely looks handy, and he definitely looks like he could score very good points at this level. And I think he's going to be coming in wanting to sort of make a name for himself as well. Obviously, coming from overseas, he's obviously going to have learned a lot over there. But yeah, I think being as well playing overseas, you're going to be used to the way that Gendunov plays. You're going to be used to the way that maybe the European on that line plays as well. It's all going to link up well, and I think Slava's done a really good job there of setting that line, and I think that's going to be the line that's going to be set for the year now.
Yeah, I think so as well. If they didn't get pinched, I'm sure they won't this year. But yeah,
You never
five
know.
5-3 for the dogs. A comfortable win. In the end, two
Good
third
attendance.
period goals to win it. Charlie, anything to add on that one? A bit tough for
Just
Hull,
good
but
attendance.
Yeah, we said that, mate.
Did you?
yeah, at the
Yeah, we said that,
start,
mate.
just under.
Yeah, of course,
I'd
Sleaford, mate.
say don't. This kind of links to the next. I'll make the whole point after the Swindon game.
All right, but yeah, that finishes up the Saturday games. So some really, really good Saturday games. On to the Sunday, and starting with the one you two were at. Pitbulls against the Sharks. Now the Sharks looking defensively quite solid on the Saturday. The Pitbulls got a point to prove at home with all the firepower they've got. Well, turns out the Smetham brothers, even though they haven't played together before, apparently they've not played together in a team before. Well, they link up and they score 5 goals together. Reece Smetham getting a hat trick, Owen Smetham getting two. 9 points together. Yeah, talk to us. I'll start with Charlie, and then Dan, you can add as well. But yeah, talk through the game.
Yeah, I fair play to Pitbulls, you know. Like I predicted them 11th, so it was kind of sweet that I watched their first victory and they did it very convincingly. And I give credit where credit's due. They looked like a team in this game. They really did. The first period was shaky. Solway could have been 2-3 up, and none of the breakout passes were working from Bristol. It was yeah, it was me and Dan were looking at each other and oh. It was almost painful. Like a lot of the then suddenly, second period, they just came out like a different team. But no, they came out like a team. They were on the same wavelength, and the Smetham brothers and Wingfield was the line. And the Smetham brothers, Wingfield's a very kind of defensive centre. He really like covers the D, so a lot of the time the D pinch, and the Smetham brothers just are flipping everywhere. And like I think you could tell Solway aren't fully match fit. I think it's fair to say. Would you agree, Dan?
Hmm.
And they got caught off guard, and they didn't have Martin Grubb this weekend. I don't know why, and they conceded 3 goals in about 3 minutes
It
to
was, no, it
Bristol,
was
and
3 goals in a minute and a half.
in a minute and
Oh
a
my
half.
God.
Flip me. And it was a slaughtering. Like I think that's the right word. Like they, Solway looked all over the place. And Bristol are so quick and direct in that moment. And the Smetham brothers took advantage of that. And Solway should have called a timeout. They didn't. They didn't compose themselves. And the Smetham brothers finished the game. And to be honest, they look like I think Reece Smetham impressed last year. And I think we were looking at him going, he's a good talent. I'm interested to see how he develops. But it feels like they've got two really, really good National League talents. And I think Reece, I can't predict Owen, but I think Reece will be looking at point a game plus this year in the National. That will be his goal. He started off obviously very well to that, but yeah, very, very good performance from Bristol. Extremely impressed. And I think the thing which surprised me the most about Bristol is I thought they were going to be very heavily reliant on Dunbar and Bricknell, and that will come.
Sure.
That will definitely come. Like they will have to rely on them guys in a lot of games, but this game they didn't need them really massively. Britnell made 2 good plays to be fair with him. He made a really good pass, but yeah, fair play Bristol. Bristol fans, I've had a Bristol fan say to me, "You're not positive about us." Well, there we go. I can be positive about that game because it was a cracking performance.
Yeah, Reece Smetham 5 point night. A Smetham involved in every single goal. But Dan, from a Solway perspective, I actually I said before after the Swindon game on Saturday that their most lively, I think, import for me was Dylan Stewart. He looks like a really good power forward, quick skater, hard skater. He got 2 goals, which will be good for him personally. But yeah, I think, as Charlie said, I think not having that coach on the bench to call that timeout. It was 3 goals in a minute and a half, but 4 goals in less than 4 minutes. And I think if there was a coach there, possibly a timeout gets called, but it's going to be tough for these first few games on the road for Solway, isn't it? I think we can't judge until they start being able to play at home and actually get in those skating sessions, but they don't want to be too far behind either.
Yeah, I think it's definitely tough, obviously, having to go into a game like that and going into the moment of being down when you were leading in the game, and then obviously getting those 3 goals really quickly. I think someone really had to take charge at that point. You had Jake Bolton through the weekend that I saw was definitely taking lead in some bits, and then you obviously had Joey Coulter as well, as coach before. He sort of took it a bit. He took when there was a timeout in the Bristol game later on in the game, it was Joey Cole that was doing the timeout. But I think someone in the moment just had to be like, right, boys, we need to come together now. Like we've just conceded 3 goals in what 1.5 minutes. It's like we have to like lock it down. We've got this D pairings here. Send out your top D pairing for the night and just lock it down and just sort of you don't have to lock it down. Just be more defensive just for that moment because Bristol are a young team. They've always been that team that once they get momentum going, once they get a
Momentum
bit of
team.
once they get a bit of liveliness in that bench, they're just going to keep playing off it. And Solway let them do it. Solway let them come in. They let them odd man rushes after odd man rush, and obviously Bristol took advantage of it. And it was pretty funny that we had Max Wigfield's dad stood next to us when this all happened. So obviously he saw his son obviously getting like a +4 on in one
Scored as
period.
well.
So it was pretty good seeing that.
He was selling as well. It's cool.
Yeah, he was loving it, and
He tried to
he was
high
in.
five me after one of the goals, and I went, "I'm a Swindon fan, mate. I'm not celebrating a Bristol goal. I'm sorry."
But yeah, no, it was a solid performance from Bristol, and I think they can come away from that weekend very happy, and especially that they got that win in front of their home crowd and sort of started the season off well, even though they did lose in MK. Like Charlie said, it's not a bad way to lose.
Yeah, they weren't expected to win that one, really. They got the 2 points at home and they got to try and build that momentum at home. I think we said in the Bristol preview, they got to make that home rink a fortress. And when they're scoring goals in momentum like that, they can um, catch a lot of teams out during games. Onto the Romford versus Sheffield game. Romford's only game of the weekend because the Basingstoke one on Saturday was cancelled. And without Sean Miller and TJ, you're thinking this could be a tough one against a Sheffield team who's got a lot of talent, but fair play. And we'll start off by just saying what a touch from everyone at the Sapphire. Obviously paying their thoughts and respects to Graham Ailiff, Brandon's dad. I just want to say what a guy Brandon is, by the way. We had him on for the Raiders special, and I was chatting to him after the game. Just such a down to earth lad, Romford lad, and yeah, what a moment for him as well. Getting that goal in front of his dad's seat. Honestly, I got goosebumps when I was looking at those pictures, and he went up to it and celebrated. And I think you said to me, Charlie, you could tell the Romford boys, they played their absolute heart out that night, and arguably got a goal called out against them at 3-3, which could have changed the result of the game, but they still get a point. And yeah, it was a special night.
Yeah, and I think that's the Romford mentality,
Yeah.
never die, always always go, and they never give up in games, and I respect that a lot. And it would have been a very emotional night for Brandon. I'm gutted that goal got disallowed. Like that could have been so iconic. But just what a team. What like that is what ice hockey is about. It's about the connection between fans, players, and the bond which that is, and how close all of them Romford boys are, and how close the Romford fans are with a lot of the players. And yeah, really special night. And I think the night was more important than the result. Yeah, they lost in overtime, but that's just one of them things. I think they didn't have a great preseason. It was a little bit negative. And they played a Sheffield team which had a really good preseason, which is really hot at the moment. And they put our fight up for the full 65 minutes. And so, yeah, a lot of credit to Romford and credit to Sheffield for battling through as well, and getting the 2 points in a tough away ring. But Yeah, I think once they get TJ back from the ban and Miller kind of coming back in, they said on an interview he was day to day. So that would be massive for them.
On that disallowed goal, have you seen it, Dan?
Yeah.
I think that was very harsh, very, very harsh. And I think that's a moment, and I'm going to bring it up again just briefly. That's a moment where I think there should be a challenge because the referee might not see it in the same way in that moment to if he went to the screen and had a look. I really do think he was outside the crease and there was very minimal contact. He didn't himself make any contact with the goalie, in my opinion, and that would have changed the game. I think 4-3 to Romford. Brandon getting that goal. So I did feel a bit hard done by. If I was a Romford fan, I would feel a bit hard done by. But you can't argue with that overtime winning goal from Ripley. Picked up the puck, did a couple skating sessions with the puck, and then just flicked it home. But yeah, not a bad result for Romford with all things considered in players going out as well. But then a really good result in hindsight for Sheffield to get the 4 point weekend.
Romford needed that. Even though they lost, they needed that sort of bit of positivity. Obviously, it's good for them that they're able to in that game go toe to toe with Steel Dogs. So like you look at that team, they beat Hull the night before, and they're going into Romford, and it's good to see that Romford without they've obviously Sean Miller, we know what he can do. Without TJ, we know what he can do, and they can go into that game and take them to overtime. And like we said, on another night, it could have gone another way, and Romford could have won that game. And I think it's really good that Romford have sort of got that in their head now that even though they did have a tough preseason, like Charlie said, they can go toe to toe with teams, and I think they just have to keep going through that this season. They just have to keep thinking about the positives in games and just keep thinking about sort of how why they're in this league and why they're able to compete, and they have got a competitive roster, and I think that's just going to help Romford through, and we know what Romford can do when they stick together and really come together as a team and get that team bond out on the ice. And we've always said, I know I put them bottom, but we've always said Romford are going to be a team that will always come together for the moment. They'll always come together
Yeah,
on the
don't
ice
prove us wrong.
and play their best. And yeah, it's fair play to Romford, and it's a positive to take again.
Right, on to the second of the Swindon games away in Hull. I didn't go to this one because I had work the next day, and I
Ooh.
wanted to be awake and ready because I've just started the job. But I wish I had gone because the whole Seahawks fall to a 4-2 defeat to the Wildcats. I gotta say, it was a very close game actually. I think the scoreline showed that the first period. I did watch the stream. That obviously them two were at the Bristol game. The first period, I thought the Wildcats were really, really good. They went behind quite early for a snipe from Callie Robertson, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go in Hull. They're going to get a few here, but we settled down. We get a power play goal. Sorry, we get a goal through Eddie Bebris. Back at forward, crash in the net. That's what you want him to do. And he latched onto it. And then a power play goal from Bebris again. A different type of goal where he just bullied the defenseman, just went straight past him and backhanded it in. And we could have had another two or three goals, I think, if we are a bit more clinical. But it goes to 2-1. We get that third goal in the second period. Ed Bradley, for some reason, just loves scoring in Hull. I think in his last three games there, he's scored like 4 or 5 goals. He got one. Great work from Dylan Lipsey and Josh Shaw, the fourth line. And then the whole pressure. And when you get the whole pressure in their barn, your defense has got to be so tight nipped. They can't force anything. They can't do any silly mistakes. Hull had a couple power plays and they did score on one. Sobchak got it back to 3-2. But that third period, Charlie, in Hull, 3-2 up with a whole 20 minutes to try and defend the lead. And Rennie Marr come up big again with a one-on-one save with Sobchat. But it's just so nice to see from a Wildcats point of view that we shut that period out.
Yeah, this is what this Swindon team should be built for. We build from the back. We've got one of the best netminders in the league, and he just keeps getting better at the moment.
Yeah.
It's brilliant to see how Rennie's developed in the last year and a half, and I think the defense has played its part. But Rennie just looks confident and excited on the ice. And yeah, that's what you got to do. And it's a tough weekend on Hull, but they played two really tough teams. And yeah, big win for Swindon. Like even Eddie Bebris back up forward 2 goals is hilarious. It's what you want, just goals across the whole depth. You the Swindon team has got 4 lines which you can consistently roll out, and you want goals across, especially the top 9, and then that fourth line will chip in, and that's going to be a big counter to us. Our imports got 1 point. That's massive. It's a 4 import league, and we got 1 point from our imports and still came away with 2 points in Hull away. Like, that's huge for Swindon, huge. And I think it's just about building steps forward. Hull were out without Jason Hewitt, their third line centre, and I think that's counteracted with Aaron now being out as our third line centre. So, very even matchup going into the day. And yeah, I think it's a great start to the season for Swindon. And the one thing I wanted to mention on Hull, which I was going to mention on Sheffield, and it's a bit like Leeds, I guess, but even more for Hull, I think. Now's not the time to press the panic button. Like they played, and this is just through my predictions. I know everyone's is different, but they played a Sheffield team I predicted to go third away. And I think Sheffield is a much tougher away game than it was last year. And it was quite bitter because Davy Phillips got the win over them and stuff. And like, yeah, I can see why they'd be annoyed about that one. And then they played a team which is probably favourite to win the league in their own barn. And it was a 1 goal game where apparently they had a breakaway with 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, Sobchak.
Yeah, so it's literally like that. The game was that could have won them it, and so it is frustrating for Hull, but you could look back at the end of the season on them 2 games and go, yeah, but now we're beating the Talfords, the Bristols, the Solways. They're important, but sadly for Hull, it doesn't get any easier. Their next game is MK in their barn, so it could be a tough start. But I don't think now's the time to throw the toys out the pram. I think there's a lot to look forward to with Hull. They've got quite a lot of new players in this team which are going to be adapting, and they lost both games by, well, 1 goal game in my eyes in our game, and then a 2 goal game in the Sheffield game. It's margins, very slight margins, and I'm not too worried about this whole team. I know it will pick itself back up and get wins. But yeah, I'm happy
It's
for
going to take
Swindon.
time for their defense to kind of gel in this new system. There was a few times where they didn't know when to pinch. Obviously, with Hull dominating the zone, and they didn't know when to pinch, when not to pinch, and you could kind of see that in the first. Have I got a spider on my neck? I don't know. But yeah, and sorry, Ben O'Connor got that empty net goal, by the way. Just banks it off the board, it goes straight in,
Yeah,
whether he missed it
100%
or not.
accidental. I watched the highlights. Um,
He did
if
mean
he
it, but
deliberately did that, fair play. But he does do that dump all the time. He
yeah,
does love the bank off the boards dump, so it's not an icing. But
yeah.
yeah, definitely accidental.
But yeah, great 4 point weekend for Swindon in a tough one. And yeah, we got Hull away out quite early. And as you said, Charlie, I know Matty was gutted, but I don't think he should be too disappointed. Obviously, you want to win the games. I get that, but there's plenty more games to go in the season, and that wasn't a cup game either. On to the next one, which was a cup game, and it was another defeat for Leeds. Phantom's only game of the weekend, Dan. They have got kind of this number over Leeds when they're playing in Peterborough, don't they? And even under the new coach, they went 4-1 up in the first period. Dylan Lawrence getting 2 goals on the power play, which is huge for them because when you've got a Dylan Lawrence who's on it, who's going to add to that power play, they've split up the lines as well. And Lawrence has started hot, and I think he's a guy where if he's playing well, he's playing well, and that showed in that game. Morgan Clark Pizzo, it's like a different player in this Peterborough team, and apparently he was really good on Sunday, and he's fit straight into that Peterborough team. The Knights did make a push to try and get back into it, Dan, but we said Hayden Levine's gonna have an improved season, and him and that defense, but it starts with your goalie. Shut that game down against a Leeds team who would have been desperate to try and get something from that game. So just a great win and a great start for Ash Tate at Peterborough.
Yeah, I think Tate does coach those big games really well. I think throughout his career he's been able to do that. I think in Basingstoke, obviously it was tough with the roster that he was coaching. But I think he always showed up for those big games, and he was able to get some big wins. And I remember for Basingstoke, he got a few wins in Hull, got a few wins in MK,
MK.
and obviously I don't think he won in Leeds. I think he might have won when he was a player, with
Yeah.
player coach. He might have got the win in Leeds, but I think, and obviously last season with the Bees, it was MK and Leeds as well. And I think
Swindon.
Tate just knows how to set his teams up for those big games, and I think what Tate's style is obviously he likes to play that defensive style, but he's got that no discredit to obviously Basingstoke, no discredit to Bees, but he's got those offensive players that he can use now in Peterborough. He's got those guys. He can run three lines and be able to create offense from that. And I think Tate is going to do well in these big games with Peterborough because for one as well, not many teams like going to Peterborough. Not many teams are like playing on an ice pad. Peterborough like to play in Peterborough. They just know the ice, and so that's going to make it hard. And then I just think, like I said, the way Tate coaches, I think, is also going to make it hard for teams coming in. And he's going to love getting those big wins. He's going to love getting. I'm excited to see MK go to Peterborough. Obviously, he's got that added rivalry game, and MK have always had that bit of a struggle going to Peterborough. So I'm excited to see that. But yeah, I think it's a good confidence boost for Tate. I think the fans will be putting confidence in their coach now. I think now they've seen a few games, they're gonna sort of slowly but surely move away from that Slava fandom that they have. I think they're slowly going to be able to put a bit of praise into Tate. But if you wanted a big win and a big game to boost a bit of confidence in the team and the coach, Leeds is a perfect game to do. And fair play to Tate and fair play to the Peterborough team.
Just on a quick point, which I put in the group chat, talking about Pizzo, and I think he had a tough year last year in Sheffield. It just didn't quite click. And he comes to Peterborough and he had a really, really good game, had a good pre-season as well. You look at Mackenzie, whenever he's played for Peterborough, he's been solid. As much as Slava was great with these younger guys and getting the team to play his way, I just think there's something about Peterborough. That team's been together for so long. They've got that bond. I think it goes under the radar how much of a team Peterborough are. And I know that stemmed with Slava, but I think even with Slava not there, they're still going to carry on that kind of ethos of the players playing well and bringing those younger guys up. So I did want to mention that
I think,
because, go on,
yeah,
Charlie.
I think one big point is the fact that the whole roster stayed.
Yeah.
They lost Jarvis, and I can't massively think of anyone else
Mm.
huge. And so they kind of kept this whole core. And so Slava was a huge part in building that core. And he built that close knit team. But that close knit team has stayed together. Barron didn't get taken, Thorpe didn't get
Huff.
taken, Huff is still there, Luke Ferrara is still there. This core, Norton, probably one of the biggest players in this core, it's stayed together and they just build around that. So Pizzo comes in and you've got this core who are going to breed confidence. And again, I think Luke Ferrara is such a good captain. Like that comes from the captain, and he's someone who will fill the dressing room with confidence. And they did it without lacking him. Mental. Three imports.
I know, no Lackinen. He didn't play, but they still got the win. That speaks levels again, players stepping up. On to the final game this weekend, and it was an absolute banging game for the Telford Tigers again. What a weekend. Leeds away, MK at home. Probably they would have taken, well, fans I know I've spoke to would have taken probably 2 points from that weekend while they've got all four. They're top of the league, a 6-3 win at home against the MK Lightning, a place where the MK Lightning have struggled in previous seasons. Now, I'm going to start with something which I mentioned to both of you. I was confused, and I completely get goalie rotation, but I was very confused to see Curlin starting. Now, I'm not saying this loss is Curlin's fault. I'm not saying that, by the way. Telford deserved to win, and I think they probably would have won that game with Headley. But why are you rotating the goalies when Headley played such a good game against Bristol on Saturday? He had such a good end to the season last year in a rink which you've notoriously struggled in. you would have probably said if you're going to play Headley this weekend, Curlin this weekend, you play him at home against Bristol, and Headley doesn't start on Sunday, and they lost. And I was just very confused about it, Dan. And I think both of you are agreeing with me. I think in the National League, we've seen Gospel will play 50 games minimum in the season. Rennie will play 50 games minimum this season. All these import netminders will play minimum 50 games. And I completely get that Curling can be a starter in the league. But when you've got your number one in Headley, who I believe is the number one, I was confused to see him not get the start on the Sunday, Dan.
Yeah, it was weird. I'm a big advocate for sort of if something's working, why change it? Like they obviously they carried on with Spadafor in the second game against Telford. They didn't bring in Jokinen, so they kept that the same. The only thing they changed was the goaltending, and the only thing I can think of is sort of mind. Like obviously Headley, maybe obviously we know they've lost a lot of games in Telford. Maybe Headley might it might be in his head that they sort of can't get over that hump, and
Think so.
they might
I
swap it
think
out.
maybe I reckon it's he's just said that Curlin's going to play the game before the weekend. But I think after Headley has such a good game on Saturday,
I'll give you the big example. Brad Day played both games.
yeah,
He was in Leeds and he got the start. And I think it's a very similar tandem, Norton, Brad Day to Headley Curlin. And Brad Day had the momentum from the day before. He played a really good game and he got rewarded by that. And I think if Brad Day had have lost in Leeds, I'm not a mind reader, only Tom Watkins knows. But I think if Brad Day had have had a bad game in Leeds, I think Norton would have started on the Sunday. But I think Tom Watkins played Brad Day because he earned his spot the night before. And I think if you are going to do a two goalie tandem in this league, because there are teams which have got their starter who will start 96% of games, if you are going to do a two goalie tandem where you have a 1A, 1B, you have to play goalies when they win. I think anyway.
no, I agree.
Like the last three, no, the last five league wins. So since the National League came back, Brad Day started pretty much every game. Brad Day started every game. Gospel started every game for 3 seasons. Walker did play three that one year, but I do think having a one goalie is important.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what we think, and be interesting to see who plays this weekend. But onto the actual game itself, just this was where the imports come alive, really, and I think they probably had good games on the Saturday. But just not in terms of points wise. It was the depth guys doing the job, but tonight, not tonight, Sunday night, David Thompson getting 2 goals and 3 assists as well. Caelan McPhee, Dan, who in the U Sports wasn't a guy who got loads of points. Well, he comes in, gets 2 goals and an assist. You've got Rhodes Mitchell King with one of the coldest sellies, just one arm, just to the point after scoring a short-handed goal. What a performance from them! A couple power plays. Oh, sorry, 3 power play goals, a short-handed goal, and 2 5-on-5 goals. Yeah, like that's just the perfect Sunday. And I'd probably say we know how good they are at home, but that Sunday performance just epitomizes Telford at home, doesn't it? When they're all ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about the Saturday and how it was all their depth guys, and then they go into Sunday and the imports start coming in and start scoring. If you can get the depth guys and the import guys going in one game, like that is scary to think about, and it's scary that we're going to be going there on Sunday. But um, you've the guy that I wanted to talk about was Caelan McPhee. He's a guy that obviously we said he's not a big points guy, but he's going to come into this league and he when he gets confident and once he gets a bit of confidence, I saw it when we watched him play Bristol in pre-season. He does jump up in the play a bit. He
Yeah, scored
can
a nice
skate.
goal.
He's a really good skater, and he knows that he can jump up in the play in this league. He knows that he's not going to really get caught out because he can skate quite well and sort of cover himself, and he reads the game really well, so he doesn't get caught out. But I think when this guy gets confident, he is gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets his highest point scoring year since he started playing. Like he's going to go for a career high in points in Telford because I think this league naturally is a high point scoring league, and I think once he finds that out, he's going to be quite dangerous. And I think there's no harm in having a guy from the back that's gonna pick up points. Obviously, they've had Rhodes Mitchell King, but that's sort of the only guy that they have had from the back that's going to pick up those points. So having two of those guys confident is really big, and we know what you're going to get from Thompson and Henderson when they're confident. Like those guys on their night, they're one of the hardest play. They're one of the hardest duos to play against, and obviously they came up big in that night, and they're the nights that they need to come up big in. And if you want to beat the big teams, your big players have to step up, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I do want to see Telford against the teams around them, or who were around them last season. But the big one for me, both those games they won were cup games. Wow, two cup games out the way. They've got 4 points from them, and it's against possibly two of the hardest, if not the hardest, games to play. Against Leeds and MK. And we normally say about 6 or 7 is the target you got to get. Well, 5 more wins, and you'd say they've got that cup spot. On the other hand, Leeds, um, both of the games they played were cup games. So they've dropped 2 games in the cup already. So you'd think out of their last 8 cup games, who includes the likes of Swindon, MK, Hull, they've got to try and get at least 6 or 7 minimum out of those 8 games. So interesting with the cup and how it works. Teams playing each other different days,
The
but go
the
on.
Bison game on Sunday is also a cup game,
Oh, so Telford, if they win on Sunday, could have
which they
six
won't.
points.
They won't
Um,
win on Sunday.
we'll go through that in a minute. But yeah, anything to else, Charlie, on the Telford kind of team and Sunday? Oh, actually, quickly on MK, it's tough for them, isn't it? Because they had all this talk about whether they'd be able to do it in the small rinks. It's the first game. I'm not going to go into and hard on it. Same, I think when we review all these games, it's very early days. There's 52 more games to be played, but it's something they got to get over, isn't it, Charlie? Being able to play in rinks which isn't those big ones.
Yeah, I guess maybe the biggest worry from the game is you chose your import defenseman. And this conversation, as you said, is always going to turn up because when you have 5 imports, you're going to be under scrutiny, and the pressure is, did you pick the right four? When you have your import D in and you've got 2 import D playing, you would expect maybe more of a solid defensive performance. And they conceded 5 goals, and then the sixth was an empty net, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably the disappointment side is I think picking Spadafor for a game like this, you're really expecting that kind of solid defensive performance, and it wasn't quite that. So, yeah.
Yeah. But great weekend for Telford. My player of the week goes to Caleb McPhee. I think he was absolutely brilliant this weekend for Telford settling in. On to the fixtures then to end. Ready for this weekend. Whether we'll do an episode next week reviewing, we'll have to see. We'll try and get an interview on. But we're starting with Charlie's just gone, so me and Dan will go through it. But Sheffield versus Peterborough again, another big test for Sheffield. That's on the Friday night, Dan. So we can get the stream for that bad boy. Because I will not be going up to Sheffield
What?
twice in the same weekend. Because we do play them on Sunday. But yeah, big game for both teams. Phantom's first away game of the season. Swindon at home against Romford. Romford won't have Sylvester. But they Wow, if Charlie said Miller was day to day, you can assume Miller will probably be back in the lineup. They get TJ back in the lineup, so a bit more depth for Romford. So another test for Swindon. Interested to see if Aaron plays. I'm not sure if he will. But yeah, either way, a very depthy team for Swindon to play, and we were good last weekend. Bristol at home against Leeds. This is a big one for me because if Leeds lose this, Charlie, is there going to be big questions asked?
Yes. Bristol are going to be feeling pretty good. They
Yeah.
had a really good last game, and Leeds are going to be feeling frustrated, I think probably would be the word. And so uh it's a massive game. It's a massive 2 games for Leeds. Like to be honest, and this is no diss on Bristol, but you'd expect Leeds to come away with 4 points. And after last weekend, they have to. They really do. If you're dropping, I don't. Which one's the cup game?
The Sunday.
And
So
that's
Leeds at
in.
home.
So I know it sounds silly, but and I do think they will win that, but you have to. And there is pressure, and there is this idea, and the fact that they were 4-3 up at home, and then they lost it. It just seeps into their mind that little bit. So yeah, I think there's pressure. I think Leeds are good with pressure in previous seasons, and so they've got to live up to it. But yeah, it's going to be a tasty little weekend, that one. And I
Yeah, I'm
think if I'm
interested.
Bristol, especially that Saturday night,
Yeah, I
I
think
fancy
Bristol will be
myself
looking
to
at
give
it.
it a close game.
I think Bristol will be looking at it going, if we can get 2 points off Leeds, hit them while they're down, get that home game down with the momentum, who knows what can happen.
Tommy Napier's got to have a big, big, big performance in that
Yeah,
home game. That's
I
what you want
assume
your
he'll play
import
both
goalies
games as
for.
well.
You want your import goalies to step up in a game like that. And if he can do that in that Saturday night, it could be a very tight game.
That's the game where I'm thinking Britnell Dunbar, if they can get a partnership going, maybe a few power play goals, who
And then the
knows?
D men, like again, yeah, Bristol just have to step up. They got D men who can really do it, and I think, yeah,
Stick
that
batch
game
on
for
Kieran
me,
Brown.
exactly. You got Batch, Butler, Cochrane. I think Cochrane's coming back. I don't know how long his ban
Yeah,
was,
Cochrane should be back, I think.
but yeah, just if you're Leeds, you got to find a way to get the win in Bristol. It don't matter how, you just got to
Yeah,
get
I
it.
think it's not about performances this week with Leeds. Yes, they want some good performances. They just want 4 points out of this weekend. Milton Keynes at home against the Solway Sharks. Again, a very tough one for Solway. I guess they'll try and come out a bit similar to how they did against Swindon and see what can happen. But you'd expect Milton Keynes to get the 2 points, especially rebounding after that defeat on Sunday. And then this one's a good one. Peterborough against Telford. Arguably two of the best teams on the Sunday going up against each other. Telford have struggled quite a bit in Peterborough last season. I think they got hammered there last season. So I think it'll be a different kind of game, this one. And then the Sunday games, Swindon away to Sheffield, a nice early one at 4 o'clock, which means I should get back in some decent time when I go to that one. I think Dad might go to that one as well. Leeds, as Charlie mentioned, with that doubleheader against Bristol. Romford against Solway, Dan, is a very interesting one.
Hmm.
Romford will have that momentum from last week's home game,
They'll
and
have
if
Sylvester as
Solway,
well.
pardon?
They'll have Sylvester as
Yeah,
well.
Sylvester will be back because it's only one game. But if Solway lose again on that Saturday, they've really got to try and hit Solway whilst they're down.
Yeah, I think especially the fact that they lost last week against Bristol. Obviously, you go into that weekend, you think it's going to be tough against Swindon, but you want to get points off Bristol. They lost to Bristol. They go into MK. It's going to be tough to get points from MK. So they look at Romford. They're like, we have to get points now. We have to get points from this team. This is a team that is going to be around us in the league table. This is a team that we can beat. And I think this is the game where their D really has to step up. Like I was saying to Charlie, you can't have that top four D pairing and ship seven to Bristol. Like you just can't do it. You have to come together as a team. And I don't know if Martin Grubb's going to be back. I don't know what's going on with that. But like I said as well, someone has to take lead. If it means someone has to come off the ice and be on the bench, like Wilcox did for Hull a few times last
Maybe
season,
Coulter. Yeah.
um, you just need a guy to be there just to man that bench and really sort of get those lines going because Solway the whole weekend didn't seem to get those lines rolling. It sort of seemed to be really hit and miss with what lines were going out. And I think line matching is going to be so important against that Romford team because we know if Romford can catch you and get goals and momentum like Bristol did, they will make you pay, and they are going to make Solway pay if they don't tighten up at the back, and that's something that Solway need to watch out for.
Yeah. Shout out to Jamie Smith's dad, by the way. 0-1 in his NIHL coaching. He had to step in on the bench for
And
Solway.
he benched six guys for about 30 seconds.
Yeah. A couple too many men penalties. But yeah, the final two games then, the big one for Hull and Milton Keynes. It's going to be a cracker, I think, because it is a bigger ice pad, and MK have been quite good in Hull. There's been some very high scoring games. Last season, it was 9-6 to MK. But Hull, they need to get some points on the board. And I can imagine they're going to be playing hard. Their only game of the weekend, obviously, with the Bison one getting called off on the Saturday. So yeah, yeah, that is a juicy game. I'm looking forward to that one. And then Telford at Bison. How
What a
fitting we end
team!
on this one.
What a team!
Finally, we get a game in, and they're playing top of the league at the moment. Top of the
Ah,
league, Telford.
come on,
But
mate.
as I said, I think it's a different type of game for Telford. Because it's a lot more, I think, bigger team in Basingstoke, a lot more physical. Um, they haven't got maybe as much skill as a Milton Keynes, but that's not a bad thing. They're going to go out differently, Dan, and going to make it tough for Telford, aren't they? You got Zach Shankar at the back there, who's going to try and body some of those
What a
Telford
player.
forwards.
Yeah, no, I'm interested. I think what I'm most worried about for Basingstoke is our start. Obviously, we haven't played since the Bristol
2 weeks,
weekend,
yeah.
so and I think we've been limited for ice time as well for training. So what I'm worried about is that we come out quite sluggish and slow, and obviously if Telford catch us, we're gonna pay for that. And I think because Telford are gonna be in that momentum of play, and they're probably gonna be at match fitness. I'm not saying Basingstoke aren't gonna be at it, but Telford have been in those games. They've been in two league games now, well, cup games, but they've been in those games. They've been in that environment, and I think if Telford can get on us early, I think that sort of sets the mark for the game, and it's going to be tough to sort of get back into it in Telford. But I think that's the biggest thing about that game. I think is how both teams start. Obviously, Basingstoke are going to come out firing. We know they're going to be buzzing to play their first league game. Obviously, it's a lot different to pre-season. It's going to have that different feel to it. It's obviously going to be points on the line. But yeah, that's the big take for me, I think.
Nice one. I'm gonna get a guaranteed goal scorer from you both. And I'll pick one as well. For the weekend. Charlie, Dan, or do you want
I'll
me?
go for Kieran
What
Brown
for
against
for any
Bristol.
team?
That is just such a cop out.
Oh, you asked me for a guaranteed
Uh,
goal. If I was to put my money on someone, I'd put it on
yeah,
Kieran
you get
Brown.
odds at probably 1 to 10, maybe.
Okay, I will go
I'm
for
gonna go Balint Kosti.
I'm gonna go for Jamie Smith.
Okay, all right. Jamie Smith, assisted by O'Connor. Charlie,
You're right, mate. Do you
what are you
remember Ben
doing? Charlie
O'Connor?
just blanked me there.
Do you know who Ben O'Connor is?
Right, Dan, who are you going for?
Liam Payton.
Liam Payton. All right, this
Mate,
is
how
annoying.
boring are you guys picking Leeds players?
All right.
All right,
Well, that was a
Zach
rubbish
Shankar.
little one for
Zach
us there.
Shankar's going to get a goal,
Zach
and he's going to get a
Shankar.
hit
All right,
and an
there we go.
assist.
Now
I'm,
we're
I'm gonna
talking.
go back to Kieran Brown.
Zach Shankar's going to get a Gordie Howe. There we go.
Okay. Right. Let's wrap this one up then. We appreciate everyone listening and being patient with us through this season, but we're looking forward to it. It's been a great first weekend. And yeah, make sure you follow the socials, even if they are a bit slow. So yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.